Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video, and this time we are taking another look at the complete first season of Andor on Home Video. This is our second coverage of it. You can find the first coverage of it covering the US releases back in episode 513. This is our second episode on it, so you probably know what's coming if you've been following the show, just in the sense that we are always doing the same thing with these new releases of Disney Plus series on home media. We look at it from the US when it comes out in the US, then we look at it from the UK when it comes out in the UK, because that shows us differences between regions, and those regional differences tend to carry across oftentimes the rest of Europe over there, and it gives us a chance to make a comparison between the different regions and what we actually got. So, you may recall that back in episode number 513, which, by the way, is where you can find all kinds of detail about the bonus features and that kind of stuff, like what the bonus features include, how long they are, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go into depth with that here because we already did back in 513. In 513, we saw that in the US, the complete first season of Andor got a Blu-ray release, like so, and got a 4K release, like so. Well, it should come as no surprise, after all that we have seen with Mando Seasons 1 and 2 and with Obi-Wan, that yes, they took the same approach in the UK as they did to those three previous releases. And that was to give the UK a release of Andor that essentially combined what we got in the US. In the UK, it is a 4K and Blu-ray combo pack. Only one release for the UK. So, you'll find a lot of this is going to feel familiar if you are someone who's been following this series for a while, because yes, they follow the same patterns we saw before. So, we have our Steelbook for Andor here. Slightly embossed Steelbook and all. We have our J-card, which is essentially like a cup to sit it in. I will take this off and just show you the J-card before I show you the actual Steelbook. So Star Wars Andor, the complete first season, ratings, 4K Ultra HD plus Blu-ray, includes bonus extras and concept art cards. A shot there of the open Steelbook with the cards but no discs. The side, product number and ratings. Other side, product number and ratings. The back, sort of rearranged for what we saw for the US version, but essentially the same information. It does say 4K Ultra HD Collector's Edition, the complete first season. Doesn't mention Blu-ray, just 4K, even though it does include both. Shot there of the discs and art cards with the Steelbook. It's kind of hard to see, but it does have both versions of the discs that are like stacked on top of each other there. Episode list, description, bonus feature information, again, that we've seen before when we looked at it back in 513. Specs for the discs, including languages and whatnot. Your various icons, ratings, legalese, and UPC down there. Kind of standard J-card stuff. On the bottom, you just have Star Wars Andor, the complete first season. Then we have, of course, the Steelbook itself there. Cassian, nice background shot there. Star Wars Andor, the complete first season. On the spine, we have Lucasfilm, Star Wars Andor, little Blu-ray symbol, and the 1, because, again, this is going to have multiple seasons, so like Mandalorian, they'll need the 1 when they're sitting on the shelf to tell which is which. And then the back there, continuing the art, the legalese, and the Lucasfilm logo. Now, before we dive into what is inside, let's do our typical comparison. This was the American version of the Steelbook. Notice it is not embossed. There's no embossed frame or anything. It's just flat. Okay? It is also glossy finish. When you look at the spine, it has the format at the top with no Lucasfilm, then the title, then the 1. On the back, similar, still glossy, but notice the Lucasfilm and legalese are all very muted in color rather than white. If we look at the 4K one, effectively the same thing with, again, the format at the top, so it says Ultra HD. So if we put these all together with the UK on the top, you'll notice the difference here. Format is at the bottom in the UK below the number, and Lucasfilm is at the top, whereas Lucasfilm is nowhere to be found on the US versions of them. And if you compare the backs, you will see that the Lucasfilm and legalese is much clearer in stark white in the UK than in the US. And then the cover is just different. It is a matte finish. It is somewhat embossed, not heavily embossed, but it is embossed. You can see the frame going around it with the embossing and whatnot. So a different finish and style to the Steelbook, despite the fact that the art is the same. Inside, you have that same art that we saw otherwise. In this case, there are two spindles that do not like this, but two spindles that just hold 3 discs each. The 3 4K discs on one side, the 3 Blu-rays on the other side, or vice versa as you decide to pack it up here. The US versions, given the fact that they only had 3 discs to deal with, did do that staggered thing where each disc has its own slot, whether it was the Blu-ray version or the 4K version that is situated similarly. We once again have 3 art cards, which unfortunately do get indentations because they're sandwiched in there between the spokes coming together, so I would store them differently here. But we have this one here, and this one here. Effectively the same as what we got in the US, but again, the finish in the US is somewhat glossy. The finish in the UK is not terribly glossy. More of a matte kind of finish. And again, because I always mention it, the product numbers on the back are different as well. In the case of all of the cards from the US, they all have the same number, regardless of whether it's in the 4K package or the Blu-ray package, or which of the 3 images it is, which is 8102409. Whereas the ones from the UK here, they have the number BUT4022101IN for international, and then either the number 1, 2, or 3, indicating whether it is the first, second, or third of the images in the pack. So you still get the same cards as well, the same art cards, but they are subtly different as we saw with the other releases. As for the discs, again, they work the same way as what we saw in the US, where essentially it's the same content, maybe different language options and stuff like that, but generally the same division of content that we see in the US. And the biggest difference is in the design of the actual labels. Here is the American version of the first 4K disc of Andor. Just like with Mando and Obi-Wan, notice there that they took sort of this idea of we're going to take sort of the color and just lay it across the disc and let the empty spaces where the silver can shine through be where the art and all the words come in, which does make it, even to the naked eye, kind of difficult to freaking read, at least to someone like me. For the UK, they took a similar approach to what they did with the other ones, as I mentioned. So no surprise here, they went with the same color basically, but instead of doing it as color on the silver where the silver's shining through for the art, it is just the color with all the art and words simply in white. So we have Star Wars Andor, the complete first season, the image of Cassian there, legalese around the bottom with the product number, Disc 1, Episodes 1 through 4, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, Lucasfilm, ratings, and another little product type number underneath there. That continues on into Disc 2. Similar here, different art, of course, disc number and episodes, but same layout. And then into disc 3. I personally find these much more readable, much more legible under any light than the US versions of it. Yeah, it's got those big, garish, colorful UK ratings on it, but the rest of it's a lot easier to read. Then you have the same approach with the Blu-rays. Here's the US first Blu-ray. Same kind of thing here, where you've got the silver shining through for the art, makes it a little bit harder to read. And in the UK, just going with white. Again, Star Wars Andor, the complete first season, Disc 1, Episodes 1 through 4, Blu-ray disc, Lucasfilm, ratings, number underneath, region ABC, and legalese with product number off to the side there. So again, same artwork that we see in the US for Disc 2 there, and Disc 3, but I would argue a cleaner look. Not as fancy, but I'd go for clean over fancy any day with the way these are designed. A cleaner look in the UK than what we got in the US. So yes, once again, the same pattern emerges between the US and the UK. In the US, if you want Blu-ray and 4K, congratulations, you gotta buy 2 different copies to get that. In the UK, you get them together inside the same package. Either way, you get essentially the same art cards, albeit with a different finish, glossy or matte. Your Steelbook in this case does vary somewhat, glossy versus matte. In some cases, I know this will mean that some people will want to get multiple Steelbooks here because of those slight variations. I did, but it wasn't because of the Steelbooks per se. But just know what you're getting into here. Again, my advice would be that if you are someone for whom region does not matter, I would say the UK version that granted came out later is a better deal. But the US ones tend to come out earlier, and they tend to be in the glossier format that some folks prefer. For me, I don't really care either way. I'm not a giant Steelbook guy. But suffice to say, if I were buying them now just to watch, I'd probably get the UK version, not the US version, if I was just buying to watch, not to collect. But you know me, I'm all about the collecting. So whether it is one of the US versions or the UK version or an equivalent from another market, just know what you're getting into. Make your decisions that way. I expect that given that we have seen this pattern with both seasons of Mandalorian that they've released so far, plus Obi-Wan, plus Andor, it's probably the pattern we're going to see going forward, which also helps you plan ahead if you want to have a matching set. Well, that will wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers, regardless of how legible your disc labels are.